Poetic Justice.
Here it is. I can hardly believe it. It's been months I've given up. Truly, I had not expected an answer. I am nothing to him. He is everything. This is the most important thing that has ever happened to me. And this is how it happened. It was last autumn. I was sitting in the garden of my military academy at Wiener Neustadt under one of the old chestnut trees reading a book when the chaplain, the only non-officer of the faculty, joined me. He took the book from my hand and read the cover. "So, our cadet Rene Rilke has become a poet," he said. "You know him?" I asked. "He was my former student at the military middle school." "Really? What was he like?" "A small, serious boy, very gifted, who preferred to keep to himself. He suffered badly from the pranks and bullying of the other boys, and his parents had to withdraw him and let him continue his studies in Prague. And then? I haven't heard a word about him until now." He handed the book back to me and walked on. So, Rene was the same person as Reiner, and to think he had been expected to enter the same ill-fitting profession I was to enter, and he left it to become a poet. If I could find understanding from anyone, it would be him. Dare I send him my poems? Beg him to tell me if they were any good? If there were ever a time I would have the courage to do that, it would be now. I selected 3 of my better poems and wrote a long letter to accompany them. Never before, and never again, would I reveal myself to another person as openly and as unreservedly as in that first letter to him. And now, he has answered.
My dear Capus, you ask whether your poems are good. You send them to publishers. You compare them to other poems. You're disturbed when certain publishers reject your attempts. Well, now that you've given me permission to advise you, I suggest you give all that up. You're looking outward, and above all else, you must not do that. No one can advise and help you. No one. There is only one way. Go within. Go inside yourself and search for the reason that bids you write. Ask yourself if you would have to die, if forbidden to write.
Does he mean that literally? If I were denied the right to write, denied the right of writing, would I kill myself? If I couldn't record my thoughts, my observations, transform them into poems, if I lost that access to myself, would I end my life? How? Shoot myself in the head? I have imagined it sometimes, but I've never put the barrel in my mouth or held it up to my temple. Sometimes when I'm feeling at my most worthless, it seems an attractive escape. End all the misery, end the confusion, end the future. But I think the esteemed poet means that if I couldn't write, a part of me would die, the most vital part, the creative part, and I would join the other zombies of the world. One of the walking dead, trying to distract myself from life instead of entering it. I read on.
Unless your writing comes out of your soul like a rocket, don't do it. Ask yourself in the quietest hours of the night, must I write? Delve into yourself for a deep answer. And if it is yes, I must, then build your life according to that necessity. For a work of art to be good, it must spring from necessity.
Oh, that's a high bar. How would I do that? Have it spring forth like Athena from the head of Zeus?
You must be patient about everything that is unresolved in your heart, and try to love the questions themselves, like locked rooms, like books written in a foreign language. Don't look for the answers now. They cannot be given to you yet, because you cannot live them. And what matters is to live everything. Let everything happen to you. Beauty and terror. Just keep going. No feeling is final. For now, live the questions. If you do, then maybe, gradually, you will live your way into the answer.
I am living the questions. They bring me anguish. I cannot avoid them. Every way I turn, they plague me. What should I be doing? Where is my path, my satisfaction, my fulfillment? To what? To whom do I dedicate myself? I am in confusion, despair. I am foundering, wasting my life, and you advise me to love the questions. How can I love this endless churning? I'm like a dog chasing his tail. You say that if you gave me the answer, I could not live it. Please try me, I beg of you. Give me an answer. This waiting is too difficult.
Difficult things are what we are asked to do. Almost everything is difficult. And everything matters. All my good wishes go with you. I believe in you.
Thanks for that. All right. No answers. They have to come from me. But can you just give me a hint? Point me in the right direction. How do I start? Where do I look?
Look to your own life. Say what you see and feel. What are you longing for?
Love. I could try a love poem.
No love poems. They are the most difficult to write. It takes great, mature power to put anything of your own into a tradition where there is already so much good, often brilliant material already there.
So no love poems.
No general themes. Write about your everyday life. What you see, what you hear, your thoughts, your memories.
My everyday life is dull, empty.
Oh, Capus, don't blame your life. Blame yourself for not being poet enough to call out your life's riches. For one who creates, there is no poverty. No place that is poor and indifferent. Even if you were in prison, wouldn't you still have your childhood, that treasure house of memory?
My childhood? My family? I feel doubly alone when I'm with them.
You say you suffer because the people closest to you feel distant. That shows that your world is beginning to grow vast. That sometime you will be able to reach all the way to the stars.
Sometime? But what about now? I am unbearably lonely.
Almost everyone has moments when they would so much rather trade loneliness for a sense of community. But those are precisely the moments of growth. And growing is painful, as love is painful.
Oh, God. How did you know? You can read my mind.
Love is difficult. For one person to love another, perhaps that is the most difficult thing. The ultimate task. The work for which all other work is preparation. That's why young people, beginners in everything, are not yet capable of love. They must learn it in solitude. Love does not mean merging, surrendering, and becoming one with another person. But what would you have? A union with something unresolved, unfinished. Instead, the individual must ripen, become something of their own, to become a world unto oneself for the sake of another, a love consisting of two solitudes that border, shelter, and greet each other.
And may I ask, Herr Rilke, if you have met such a person?
I am married, and we have a young daughter.
You have a child.
Hmm.
How do you manage that and your solitude?
Our daughter, Ruth, she lives with Clara's parents.
And Clara?
Clara is a sculptress trained by Rodin.
So, she is also an artist. Does that make it easier to maintain your solitude?
We are rarely in the same place. I need to be in certain climates for my health.
And Clara doesn't come with you.
It is expected and appropriate that I come alone.
Is that how you wrote Orpheus, and do we know?
Living in a castle in Rome as the guest of a Swiss patron.
Well, I need a patron.
It's either that or find a way to make a living.
Isn't it possible to make a living as an artist?
The artist takes up his destiny and bears its burden without ever asking what reward from the outside it might bring him. Being an artist means not calculating it or counting. It means maturing, like a tree which does not force its sap, standing confidently in the spring showers, without any fear that summer might not come.
It would help me to conquer my fear and not force my sap if you would kindly read my latest poem and tell me if I am improving or at least heading in the right direction. I await your answer eagerly. And with patience.
Oh, my dear Capus, a long time has passed since I received your last letter. Please, don't hold it against me. First it was work, then interruptions, and finally poor health that has kept me again and again from writing this response. You will see that I copied out your sonnet because I found it simple, beautiful, and the best poem of yours that you have let me read. And I am sending you this copy because it's an important experience to rediscover one's own work in someone else's handwriting. Read the lines as if they were someone else's, and you will feel deep inside how much they are yours.
So, I copy out the first poem of his that stirred my soul. The panther. His vision from the constantly passing bars has grown so weary that it cannot hold anything else. It seems to him there are 1,000 bars and behind the bars no world. As he paces in cramped circles over and over, the movement of his powerful, soft strides is like a ritual dance around a center in which a mighty will stands, paralyzed. How did you come to write this poem?
I was remembering my 5 years at military school, my deep confusion, how I was trying to find myself. I wrote a story about it. I called it The Gym. A young boy, the least athletic in the class, is pressured into climbing a rope. He's terrified, but he climbs halfway up. Yet the instructor will not let him come down till he reaches the ceiling. He does so, to everyone's amazement. Oh, they cheer him when he descends. And he dies of a heart attack.
When you turn against it, the heart attacks you. I know that in my blood. I can no longer wait to share my work with the world. Therefore, I have sent my poems to your publisher. I did not mention your name, but if you should feel at all inclined to recommend it, I would be beyond gratitude.
My dear Capus, I have received your request, but must refuse it for your very own sake. You must know that whatever success you achieve is on your own merit.
He needn't have worried. I have already received the return of my poems from the publisher without even a note. But, as Rilke says, nothing is as useless to creative work as criticism. It must be treated with love, or not at all. So what is my fate? To be an army officer?
What we call fate emerges from within the person. It doesn't impinge on the person from without. The future is stationary. It is we who are moving in infinite space.
Towards what am I moving?
Towards what compels you.
Your poem compelled me.
Which one?
I live my life in widening circles.
The usual culprit.
I live my life in widening circles that reach out across the world. I circle round God, around the primordial tower. I've been circling for thousands of years, and I still don't know if I am a falcon
Or a storm.
or a great song. It's that last line. And the other one.
The archaic torso.
For here, there is no place that does not see you.
You must change your life.
That is the imperative of art, real art. To ask the questions, to bring you into the mystery. I see that. But I am incapable of doing it.
Dear friend, do not believe that the one who seeks to comfort you lives without difficulties. His life contains much grief and sadness. Were it not so, he would not have found those words.
I wrote back, begging him to find me worthy of sharing his sorrows. I'd heard he was in ill health. I sent the letter, and this time there was no reply. I read the notice in the newspaper. The great poet, Rainer Maria Rilke, has died of leukemia. What a loss to the world. 1 year after Rilke's death, I overcame my grief, summoned my courage, and brought Rilke's letters to his publisher, who agreed to publish them under the title, Letters to a Young Poet. I added nothing of my own. When a great person speaks, a lesser person should be silent. As for me, I had a bit of luck when a bullet struck my lung, and I was saved from the abyss of a military career. I married and became a scribbler of newspaper articles and a few trashy movie scripts, nothing of consequence, nothing lasting. But at my death, 40 years later, Rilke's letters are still in print, as they are today. 100 years later, Rilke's poetry is still read, but it's perhaps for this slim volume that he's most remembered. Perhaps we are at our best when we seek to help another. After the Second World War, Rilke's daughter, Ruth, contacted me. She was destitute. She had nothing. I sold her father's letters to an American collector. Those original letters have not been heard of since. But these have just surfaced. A researcher found them in the Rilke family archive. They're the letters I wrote to Rilke. Rilke kept them. And now they are published. My letters in the same book as Rilke's. Rilke's letters are printed in the first half of the book and mine in the second, but if you want to follow our exchange as it happened, you can turn from one part of the book to the other. We never know how we will be remembered, or by whom. So keep on.
Another dazzling display.
A constable's sky.
An eternal sea. I am so happy to be back.
At the old house.
With you. So many wonderful memories. Sailing, swimming, clam bakes, martini.
Too many martinis.
Oh, I miss them.
Me too.
Just because I can't drink, it doesn't mean you have to deprive yourself.
I'm not
You
deprived.
just said you missed them.
One makes choices, Cal. That's my choice.
Ah, Lizzie. Had I half your courage, half your discipline,
You'd be a critic.
I'd never be as good as you. Even though you savaged Peter's book.
My review wasn't all that bad.
Oh, no? Peter Taylor's short stories are modest, corrigible. Who uses a word like corrigible?
It means
I know what it means, but who uses it? Other than you.
you kept the review?
Oh, it's devastatingly well written. And my memory is not what it used to be.
You seem to remember quite well what you want to.
But this time I want to get things exactly.
And why is that?
To make my case.
About?
Us.
I think you've already done that.
That was 5 years ago.
The scars remain.
For me too.
Cal, we agreed not to talk about it.
Okay. Okay. Let's talk about something else. How did the work go?
2 pages.
On the novel?
Huh? You can call it that. It's part essay, part journal, part memoir, part poem.
What's it about?
No plot. If I want a plot, I'll watch Dallas. In this book, I want to shift scenes and characters like a filmmaker. Chronicle life with the blanks left in. Ask unanswered, unanswerable questions.
Find resolution not in a full stop, but in a question mark.
Like a poem, Cal. Quick, offhand flashes without having to spell everything out brick by brick.
What are you calling it?
Sleepless nights.
Will I be in it?
No, you will not. And you should have given me that choice.
I lost 2, Lizzie. I lost our friends.
Won you a Pulitzer.
I regret it, Lizzie. I didn't realize the pain it would cause for you and Harriet.
You should have thought about that before you published it.
It was the only way I could process the whole thing.
The whole thing that you started.
I fell in love, Lizzie.
Yet again.
That time was different. I fell in love when I was crazy, became sane, and I was still in love.
With a woman as crazy as you.
She has a wild side, but in some ways she's as strong and clear as you.
When I heard it was Caroline, I couldn't believe it.
It happened so fast. The same way I fell for you at Yaddo.
The same
The
way.
minute I saw you.
You saw me several times before Yaddo.
Where?
At parties for the Partisan Review, but you didn't notice me. And why should you? A shy girl from Kentucky without a byline, and you, Robert Lowell, the most famous poet in America.
You must have been blind.
Blind drunk, maybe. But then, we meet again at Yaddo without your wife and entourage, and you are just another artist whiling away the summer at the Saratoga Springs colony. 400 acres of pine groves, manicured lawns, rose gardens, and artificial lakes. A welcome retreat from the blistering asphalt of the city. The motto of Yaddo: supporting artists to work without interruption in a supportive environment.
Which is honored during daylight, but when evening comes, there's a communal dinner with abundant drink and subsequent carousing. Most of us are housed in a 55-room Tudor mansion, and doors are heard to open and close in a libidinal rhythm.
That first evening, I am seated next to Peter Taylor, which is unfortunate as I have just reviewed his debut book of short stories and found it bland. He quotes my review back to me, which is very bad form. A first book by a young author needs to take risks, to dare ugliness in a battle with the inexpressible, Peter Taylor does none of that and stalks off. The next night, you sit next to me and continue the attack.
You called my friend Peter corrigible.
This time I'm ready. What's wrong with that? Corrigible means can be corrected or improved. There's hope for him.
He says you're a ball breaker.
He needs stronger balls.
Oh, I like your style. First time here?
Yes.
Well, let me tell you its story. It was built by the financier Spencer Trask as a family home. But when all 4 of his offspring died in childhood, he converted it to an artist's colony for his grieving wife. She named it Yado in memory of her youngest child's mispronunciation of shadow. Yado, Yado. Do you see these nets on the wall? Do you know what they're for?
The answer comes bursting into the room, a bat, frantically flying figure eights across the ceiling as we all duck and weave. Peter Taylor seizes one of the nets, captures the intruder, and releases him unharmed into the night sky. He returns to a round of applause.
Yeah, when it comes to bats, that man has balls.
Then you stand and pull out my chair.
Come and join me for a smoke. The sundial. You read the inscription.
Hours fly, flowers die, new days, new ways pass by. Love stays.
Consider that foreplay. Let's use your room. Mine's a disaster.
I soon learn that every room you stay in becomes a disaster. You are consummately messy.
And your room is neat as a nun's cell.
You unzip your trousers and let them fall on the floor.
You hang up your dress in the closet, place the rest in a dresser drawer.
We are in no hurry. Contrary to the frenzied consummation choreographed in the movies, heads banging into walls, brutal kisses, ripped shirts. Our lovemaking is ardent, but leisurely.
As the evening air cools our sweat-soaked skin, I light your cigarette with my own. Our filmic moment.
We inhale deeply, curl up against each other, and talk for hours. The talk is more lasting, varied, and thrilling than the sex.
Hey.
I am in love with your mind. The brilliant mind that creates brilliant poems I devour. I devour you, too, before morning. I am far from being a virgin, having lived as a single woman in a hotel room in New York City for 10 years. Now, 33. I've had many lovers. It's been both liberating and a good way to advance my career, but none of them matter. From now on, it's only you.
We spend a month at Yado in your bedroom. The 2 studios delegated to us wind up as storage closets for my overflow of papers and books and dirty clothes. While you tidy your room, I go down to the kitchen and bring up thermoses of enough strong coffee to keep us going until bourbon time.
And you sprawl out on our bed and stay there all day, writing feverishly, crossing out lines with such force that you tear the page. And when you're pleased with a verse...
Lizzie, listen. It's about Flaubert's dying. He writes till the mania for phrases dried his heart.
It's good.
Yeah. But what about he writes till the mania for phrases enlarged his heart?
It's good, too.
Which one?
They say opposite things.
So?
Let me see it.
No, poetry is music. It has to be heard.
Poets are possessed By language, it barrels through your brain, ready to roll off your tongue at any moment. You live in a world of metaphors. Just as dogs hear sounds we can't hear, poets are a different species. No wonder, however messy and difficult they may be, poets are rarely at a shortage for adoring women to organize their lives. I know that. And yet, when I go down to use the communal laundry, I take your soiled shirts, shorts, socks, and yes, your underwear. I'm running the machines for my own clothes, I reason, so why stand on ceremony? You are inept and I can do it easily. Oh, and another thing. My friend Mary McCarthy warns me about reports of your violent behavior. Broke Gene Stafford's nose twice. Once in a car crash, another in a domestic brawl, but Gene suffers from mental instability and alcoholism, and I do not. Some say I have an acid tongue. Not that I show that to you, why would I? I am in love. So, was it that way with Caroline?
Well, the attraction was irresistible. Faded.
You were married.
I was married when I met you.
That marriage was over.
I made Jean crazy. I do that to women. I did that to Caroline.
Caroline was an alcoholic and a depressive before you married her.
I made it worse. Although those first 3 years were glorious.
I saw the photos in Vogue. A legendary beauty, 15 years younger than the illustrious poet, heiress to the Guinness fortune, seen here in her ancestral estate in Kent.
Those buildings were a nightmare, Lizzie. Crumbling, rat-ridden, cold and damp.
But you fancied yourself landed gentry. Lady Caroline Sikowitz. She came from more money and a higher class than even a New England Lowell. Ex-wife of the painter Lucian Freud, daughter of the Marchioness of Dufferin and Ava, ex-wife of composer Israel Sikowitz, with whom she had 3 daughters. We're into it now, for whom you left your own daughter.
I saw Harriet whenever I could, but the other girls needed me too. Ivana was just 5 when she tripped on that boiling kettle. 4th-degree burns all over her body.
And you slept on the floor of her hospital room until you knew she would live.
I felt so guilty, Lizzie. The house was chaotic, the staff negligent. The children lived in another wing. Some days we wouldn't even see them. We'd wake at noon from drunken, drug-fueled nights.
But you managed to write.
You told me I had to. That it was one thing to destroy the 2 people who loved me most in the world, but I was America's foremost living poet. I could not forsake my work.
Or your roots. People understand you here. You are New England, born and bred.
The English enjoy eccentrics as well.
But they didn't recognize when eccentrics become psychotic.
And you do.
I had 20 years experience. Do you know what today is, Cal?
Sunday.
Our wedding anniversary. It would be our 28th. Except for the 7-year break.
Remember our wedding? No one thought we were going to make it. We were so different. Me, a troubled only child from a Boston Mayflower family. You, one of 11 kids from Lexington, Kentucky.
To celebrate your acceptance into Harvard, you were taken to a state dinner at Sardi's. When I got into the University of Kentucky, I was taken to the local diner for a bologna sandwich on white bread that tasted like Kleenex.
And no more small town born again. You wanted to be a New York Jewish intellectual.
Open-minded, left-leaning, the smartest girl in the room.
I was smitten by your southern drawl.
And I was entranced by your Boston twang. No one at the wedding was happy except us.
My father warned you I had just been released from the hospital. If you marry Cal from now on, he will be your responsibility.
I didn't know what I was getting into.
My name didn't give you a clue.
Robert?
My nickname, Cal. Cal for Caligula. Cal for Caliban.
Cal for callous. Cal for callow. Cal for calculating.
But you stayed. Stayed through it all. Do you regret it?
Regrets? No. Rage and despair, yes. But you are still the most interesting man I know.
And you thought you could save me.
From what?
From myself. That's the hell I was trying to escape from.
And did you succeed with Caroline?
Well, I tried. I wanted to start a new life. I thought it would be possible. A new life with a new family in a new country.
But you had a family, a country, a wife.
A wife who saw me as an invalid with a fragile mind that exploded into madness every year. A man who, in the grips of mania, couldn't sleep, wouldn't bathe, ranted that he was Mussolini, Napoleon, Jesus Christ. You sent Harriet away to camp so that she would be spared the sight of me.
Caroline did the same thing with her daughters.
And I'm grateful to both of you. Mania is feral, monstrous, and yet the precursor, the pre-mania state is wonderful, Lizzie. I'm bursting with ideas. I write day and night. I can't get it down fast enough.
When I have fears that I will cease to be.
That was true for Keats. He died at 25.
In Rome, in the Spanish steppes.
Of consumption.
Tuberculosis.
They named it for the symptoms back then, just as they named my illness for the symptoms. Manic, depressive. I hope it's an illness, not a terrible defect in my character.
It's an illness.
Then why can't they cure it?
When you take your meds, it staves it off.
Ah, lithium, the new wonder drug. And to think it's just a common salt.
It corrects a chemical imbalance.
Lithium is so much kinder than what went before. I still dream about it. I'm back on that metal table. They tie my hands and feet with leather straps. Put a rubber tube in my mouth so I don't swallow my tongue. Fasten electrodes to my skull and turn on the current. 1 minute. And only enough electricity to power one light bulb.
But enough to bring you back to yourself.
Sometimes it took 20 separate sessions. After each, there is a burning stench in the air, like when a wire catches fire. If I close my eyes, I can smell it now. They take me back to my cell, and when I recover myself, I am filled with shame. I remember all the harm I caused when I was manic, the abuse I flung at everybody who reached out to me, especially you, Lizzie, my stalwart, my best friend. I feel such remorse, such despair. I feel not worthy of being in this world.
That's the depression, Cal. Cal! It's part of the ailment. The black dog.
We are all worms. Churchill.
But sometimes we are glowworms. Lowell.
And we were able to return to our usual regime. Coffee, meds, morning rites, afternoon walks. Regular meals, regular sleeps.
It worked. We three were happy.
I should never have gone to England.
You were
Not alone.
excited about teaching at Essex. You were looking for a house for us.
It was that party my publishers gave. I was jet lagged, but I drank too much.
You moved into Caroline's house that very night.
I needed a place to stay.
No hotels in London.
I'm no good on my own. You know that, Lizzie.
You don't like going to sleep without a woman in your bed.
A woman's body is a great comfort.
And a new body is an aphrodisiac, a sensual feast. Was it that way with Caroline?
No. No, with Caroline, it was an explosion, an earthquake. We were out of control, one fire fueling another. She couldn't handle my mania. She was as afraid of its coming as I was. It brought on her depression, her drinking. I was no use to her. I loved her, but we couldn't be together. It was chaos. I needed peace.
And that's why you've come back?
I've come home, Lizzie. This is where I belong. Castine, Maine, in Aunt Harriet's house.
Which, during our divorce, you tried to claim.
Well, she was my aunt.
But she left the house to me. She knew you too well. You're a careless man, Cal. You lose things. In your wake, you shed shirt buttons, manuscripts, money. Your cigarettes burn holes in the sheets.
Caroline was worse.
Both need caretakers.
Although when she puts her mind to it, she's a good writer.
One good book, I'll give her that. A not-so-veiled portrait of her mother.
Who was a termagant. Gave her daughter to a negligent nanny. Caroline had to beg the neighbors for food. She was an unwanted child.
Sounds familiar.
Yes, we had that in common. Unstable mothers and absentee fathers. All writing is a form of memoir. Some are better disguised.
You didn't even try.
Oh, I wish I could imagine things, but I can only recall them.
In a way that suits you.
Most people see you as the heroine of the dog. The wrong one, the noble one.
You had no right to use my letters.
They were sent to me, they were mine.
I could have sued you. I talked to a lawyer in the matter of correspondence. The physical letter and the envelope belong to the recipient. The content belongs to the writer.
I didn't use them verbatim.
Even worse, you manipulated them.
Are you talking about, I don't wish you entirely well?
For starters,
I still don't see the difference.
in my letter I wrote, I don't entirely wish you well.
The same exact words.
But a different order, a different meaning. I don't wish you entirely well means I don't wish you entirely healthy. I'd never say that.
And the other?
I don't entirely wish you well means I don't wish you entirely happy.
You're parsing words, Lizzie.
We live by words. Here's another. In my letter to Caroline about our daughter's visit to London, I wrote, Harriet knows she will have very little of him from now on and that he belongs to you and all your children. And here's how you transcribed it. She knows she'll seldom see him.
I shortened it.
You turned my prose into lead. Flattens the pain and loss. From now on, she knows he belongs to you and all your children into she'll seldom see him. Don't tell me you don't see the difference.
I paraphrased.
Those were my words, Cal! You needed to ask permission!
Would you have given it?
Of course not! Elizabeth Bishop, your closest friend, urged you not to publish it. She called it infinite mischief.
Elizabeth was passionate about it, all right, but her argument was specious. She claimed it was irresponsible to mix fact and fiction, that if one uses a few facts about a real person's life, the reader assumes it's all true.
Why is that specious?
Because her objections weren't about that, but that I wrote about a woman whose husband was leaving her as she desperately begged her to stay.
You humiliated me! You used our real names!
Lizzie, do you remember when I was writing life studies and I was paralyzed with writer's block? Do you remember what you told me?
What?
Why not just say what happened?
Can I retract that?
I was being torn apart,
You'd made your choice.
but I couldn't act on it.
You were living with Caroline and her daughters.
But I wanted you and Harriet. I wanted our marriage, our family.
Why didn't you choose that?
I wanted both. Wanted both.
You knew that was impossible.
Not for everyone.
For me! And for Caroline. She never had to compete for anything in her life. She wanted you, she became pregnant with Sheridan, and you stayed.
I stayed and then she became pregnant.
What? That is not what you wrote in the Dolphin. You justified leaving us for the sake of the new baby.
Factually wrong, but artistically right. And I was the love of Caroline's
The
life.
love of her life. She left when you became manic. What kind of love is it that says you can't be sick?
I know, Lizzie. I know.
She was your dolphin. The magical creature that saves the drowning poet.
Because she loves his verses. Oh, I was obsessed with dolphins that summer. Did you know there's a London dolphinarium with trained dolphins? I went every day. They're extraordinarily sensitive creatures, fun-loving and omnisexual. They have their own language. Meh, meh, meh. I thought they were talking to me. I bought statues of dolphins. Dolphins, dolphins, dolphins. Dolphins as coat racks. Dolphins as lamp bases. Dolphins as paperweights. 2 life-size stone dolphins to guard the door to the house. Very pricey. Caroline disapproved, but I couldn't help myself.
Throes of pre-mania.
Oh, glorious time! If I could control the mania instead of it controlling me, I never wanted to end!
But it does end, and it ends in
But
madness.
before it spins out of control, the exhilaration, the passion. My mind expands, speeds. I see connections everywhere. Language transforms. Words alliterate, merge, harmonize. I am original, timeless.
And Caroline is your muse.
It's the sexual arousal. It's what awakens the creativity. With a new woman, I am reborn. Everything is possible.
And I don't inspire you?
You did.
And now?
It's the mystery, the unknown,
Of the woman?
of what it unlocks in me.
When you go back to Caroline,
No, that would kill me.
you're being histrionic.
And being truthful. I've been diagnosed with a heart condition. Apparently, all those years of heavy drinking and smoking and 20 bouts of hospitalizations have taken their toll.
Is that why you've come to me?
I need my friend. I've been so happy here with you.
We've gotten along
Better than ever before. We understand each other.
and don't expect anything other than what is.
So it's been all right.
Yes, it has.
Then, when you go back, may I come with you
To New York?
to our apartment?
Live together?
I want to be home with you and with Harry.
For how long? Until the next time you leave.
That won't happen.
Why should I believe you, Cal?
Things are different now. I changed. Lizzie, I changed.
I will not allow you to put Harriet through this again, or me.
I've been brought down to my knees so many times, Lizzie. But each time I got back up. But what if one day I don't? I'm so scared, Lizzie. I'll fly back to Ireland to say goodbye to Caroline and to the girls. Pack up a few things, and I'll be back.
For how long, Cal?
Forever.
So I pack up the main house, including all the things Cal forgot in his studio, and drive back to New York. Cal wires me 1 week later, tells me his flight time. I offer to pick him up at Kennedy, but he says he'll take a cab. When I tell Harriet he's coming back to us, she shouts into the phone, "When are you going to learn? How much more abuse are you going to take?" "This is his house," I say, "and everything I have, including you, is his. He is worthy of care. And so are you. You're better without him. You've published your essays. You're writing your novel." I ask her to please be at the apartment when he arrives, but she refuses. She's going to a demonstration with some fellow students from Columbia. They are protesting the death of the South African activist, Stephen Biko. I try to tell her about how her father had protested against the Vietnam War and apartheid and segregation, but she cuts me off. "He left us. He'll do it again." "No, this time he's back for good. Come by after the demonstration. It'll be too late. Just give him my love." On the day Cal is to arrive, I teach my class at Barnard on experimental fiction from 2 to 4 and return home. He's to be there at 6. At 7, the elevator man rings on the intercom. "A taxi has arrived. Can I come down?" Cal is slumped in the back, unresponsive. On his lap is a large parcel wrapped in brown paper. I get in beside him and we drive the 8 blocks south to Roosevelt Hospital, where he is pronounced dead. On the death certificate, I list Caroline Blackwood as surviving spouse and identify myself as Elizabeth Lowell, a friend. I look at his body a long time in the hospital room, memorizing his features, the length and strength of him. His face in repose seems surprised. I take his hand, his fingers still warm against my cold palm. I want to kiss him, but as I go to kneel, my knees are so stiff, I lurch forward. The doctor saves me from a fall, and I am too shaken to try again. He guides me to the door, and I do not protest. He hands me the paper-wrapped parcel Cal was carrying. An attendant puts me in a taxi. It is all done in a kindly and efficient manner. Death to them, it's an everyday occurrence. I must call Harriet. She will be comforted to know that her last words to her father, even though undelivered, were, "Give him my love." Would that love were always our parting word, for someday it will be our last. When I am back in the apartment, I unwrap the parcel carefully, as if the paper holds a message that will explain what has just happened. It is a portrait of Caroline, painted by her ex-husband, Lucian Freud, called "Girl in Bed." It shows a young Caroline leaning forward on her elbow, her eyes enormous. My heart clenches. Cal brought her with him. He could not be without her. Where was he going to hang it? In the foyer, in the living room, over our bed? And where would I have allowed it? In his study, where it would be hidden, viewed only by him, or would that have been worse? I stare at the painting as it rests upon my knees. It is a semblance, a replica of Caroline, paint on canvas, not flesh on bone, painted in a hotel room in Paris when Caroline was 22. It hung in Caroline's London dining room. It is worth a lot of money and considered one of Lucian's finest works. I place the painting on a high shelf in a back closet, face down. I chastise myself for being jealous. Doesn't Cal carry pictures of me and Harriet in his wallet and briefcase? I'm speaking of him as if he's alive. I am the one to call Caroline and give her the news. At first, she is contained and formal, but when she hears that Cal died alone, she breaks into hysterical sobs. She and the children will fly to New York immediately. Can they stay with me? And they do, for a full week. A week during which I get no more than 2 hours of sleep a night. Caroline stays awake, drinking heavily, speaking incessantly, sometimes incoherently. There are 2 questions I long to ask, but cannot summon the courage. Did he say he was coming back to her? And what about the painting? Cal's publishers inform the press, and the ensuing obituaries are laudatory and voluminous. For me, the most trenchant is, Robert Lowell died in a New York taxicab as he left the ashes of his 3rd marriage for the embers of his 2nd. I arrange for the funeral service. It is a solemn Episcopalian requiem mass held in the Church of the Advent on Beacon Hill in Boston, near where Cal was born and spent his childhood. More than 600 mourners attend. They come from New England, New York, and Europe. The organ plays "A Mighty Fortress is Our God," and I hear Cal's voice. Yet why not say what happened? From the high pulpit, the Reverend Collingwood intones, Robert Lowell knew intimately and painfully those dark, chaotic forces that forever threaten the firmament. Caroline and I catch each other's eyes. We nod in agreement. She wears no makeup other than heavy mascara, which is now running in rivulets down her cheeks. Surveying the many notables in the crowd, Saul Bellow, Susan Sontag, Norman Mailer, she murmurs, "You could sell tickets." Elizabeth Bishop quietly sobs as Mary McCarthy calls the eulogy the biggest whitewash in history. I am standing with Caroline and her children as they wait for the taxi to take them to the airport and back to London when I finally ask the question. Over the traffic noise, I need to repeat it. The painting, girl in bed, that Cal was carrying. Oh yes, she says, do you have it? I nod. He was bringing it to New York for me, to have it appraised, she says. Appraised? For tax purposes. Oh. I can do that, if you like. That would be grand, thanks so much. Not at all, I say. I'm happy to do it. More than happy. We never know how we will be remembered, or by whom.
So keep on.
I live my life in widening circles that reach out across the world.
I circle around God. Around the primordial tower I've been circling for thousands of years.
And I still don't know if I am a falcon
Or a storm.
or
a great song.